I started a message called the whitewashing of the word, the whitewashing of Jesus, and I didn't quite finish. So I'm going to kind of go back and talk a little bit about what we talked about, and then I'm going to move forward. So for the most part, what I wanted to do was establish the fact that Jesus was not who they say he was in those pictures. So we see those pictures of Jesus in church cathedrals, on glass windows, and they painted Jesus, they painted the disciples to be white. But then as you look in the Bible says something different. In Revelations 1:15, it says Jesus' feet was bronze, as if burned in a furnace. And then Daniel 10:6 said Jesus' arms and legs gleam like polished bronze. And so when we look at that, we say, well, what color is bronze? What color is burned bronze? It's not white. It's not pale. It's black. But they did it on purpose. They did it to say, we want to change the way people see God. We want to change the way people see Jesus, so that when the oppressors are seen as superior than those that are oppressed. So if the slave owners or the enslavers seem superior than the slaves, then it's justifiable by having a white Jesus, by having a picture of a white Jesus. And not just Jesus. All throughout the Bible, it talked about Job 30:30 said, my skin is black upon me. The Song of Solomon says that I am black and beautiful. And then people will say things like, well, it doesn't really matter anymore what color is Jesus. But it actually does matter. And I'm going to tell you why. In the New Testament, if you recall, Jesus said he came back for the lost sheep of Israel. He came back for his people. Now, of course, God, in his ultimate wisdom and his ultimate plan, was to bring everybody to Jesus, bring everybody to God, to bring everybody in the family. But the only way that you could get to the family in the beginning was if you was a Hebrew, if you was a Jew. And throughout the Bible, it teaches us that Jews were black. So then you had Gentiles, and there were some Gentiles there were some Gentiles who were black, but then also a lot of Gentiles were non-blacks as well. And so Gentiles were never invited in the Old Covenant. Only Jews were invited in. And that's why it's important to understand what color the people were back in those days, so that you can see who Jesus was referring to when he said, I came for my people. I did not come for the Gentiles. I came for my people. Even though Jesus ultimately did miracles and helped people regardless if they were Jew or Gentile, he mentions that in the Bible. So if it's mentioned in the Bible, it's important. And then we looked at Romans 11. And in Romans 11, one of the most powerful and ignored chapters in the Bible, Paul wrote that God punished his people. He punished the children of Israel for disobedience, for idolatry, for rebellion. And so in the Old Covenant, God punished the children of Israel. He punished blacks because we were disobedient, because we worship false gods and things like that. But he did not curse us. He punished us. He rejected us. And the difference is, when we talk about someone being cursed, that's like a permanent thing where you can never get away from the curse. And I'm going to talk about two different types of curses. But God said that he punished us, but we're always welcome back in. we're always welcome back into the family. And so even though we disobeyed God, even though we were out there, and you could go and read the Old Covenant and see all the things that the children of Israel did back in the Old Covenant in those days. Even though Hebrews, Israel was not doing the things that they should do, God said you're always welcome back. And he called us natural branches. So he basically paints this picture of a tree, and he says that the children of Israel are the natural branches, and then the Gentiles, non-Jews, were the wild branches. And so God said he's going to allow the wild branches, because of the disobedience of the natural branches, he's going to let the wild branches be a part of the tree. And so now Gentiles are now a part of the tree. But he mentions in Romans 11:18, do not consider yourself to be superior to those other branches. So wild branches, don't consider yourself to be better than the natural branches. The natural branches were broken off because of unbelief. And you stand by faith. Do not be arrogant, but tremble. So he basically is trying to tell people, yes, the only reason you're welcome into the family is because of the unbelief of the natural branches. And so these people, Gentiles, should be thanking Jews for their unbelief, because if it wasn't for their unbelief, Gentiles would never be invited into the family. So non-blacks would never be invited into heaven, into God's family, if it wasn't for the disobedience of the Jews. Okay? Now, so we were cut off, but we wasn't cursed. And that's a big difference. We can always be welcomed back in. And we were not replaced. Wild branches does not replace natural branches. And the tree is not like it's just we will always be natural branches. Even if we fall off the tree and it looks like we're dead, like your tree, the limbs of your tree fall, it's still a part of that. We're still a part of that tree. And so that's what God is saying in Romans 11. And so he says that these are the natural branches, and he mentions that and he calls us the insiders. So he calls the natural branches insiders, the children of God, the people of Israel, the black Hebrews, insiders. He called the wild branches Gentiles, outsiders. So Gentiles, non-blacks, even though there were some black Gentiles, but for the most part, we're going to say black Hebrews, insiders, white Gentiles, outsiders, even though there were some black outsiders as well. So that's what, and if you read, I'm not going to read the whole chapter of Romans 11. That's what he was saying. Insiders were mistreated by outsiders, because once the outsiders got a taste of this family, got a taste of this good life that Jesus provides, got a taste of what God said, you now have, you're no longer cursed. Once they got a taste of that, they started to mistreat insiders, started to treat them differently, as if they were always insiders. And that's the problem that we're faced today. And so this is something that Paul spoke on. He says, I do not want to be ignorant of this mystery. Israel has experienced a hardening in part until the full number of Gentiles have come in. So God's plan wasn't to erase Israel. It was to expand heaven, to expand grace, to give grace to everyone. Everyone now has a chance to experience grace. Everyone now has a chance to experience forgiveness. everyone now has a chance to experience love and the love of God. So, but they took that and they twisted it. And instead of love, there was colonization. Instead of the truth, there was whitewashing. And so these are some of the things that was going on in Romans 11. Then I kind of hinted on a couple other things, but I'm going to kind of move on to today and where we want to go with today. So we talked about in 1929, there was an agency called the Jewish Agency of Israel was established to play a role in deciding on what people get to come to this newfound country. Okay? And so for the most part, they actively sought Jews from Europe, white people. They actively sought people from Russia, Poland, France, Germany. These Jews were treated with respect and dignity. But then they did pick some black Jews from Africa, from Ethiopia. And these people had been practicing Judaism for thousands of years, but they were treated differently. They were placed in poverty, they were humiliated, and many of them committed suicide because of despair. And Israel never really embraced them. So if you look at the country of Israel, there are a small percentage of black Jews over there, but they treat them differently. They're faced with racism, segregation, economic discrimination, cultural erasure. And so it's just like what we see here in America and the history of this country, the history of Israel. All you got to do is just do a Google search and just type in segregation, racism in Israel, and you'll see this stuff. And it's well documented. And so now when we see Israel, when we say Jews, we look at those people and we say, a lot of people try to say, well, Jews are white. Okay? But that's based upon a country that's just been around for only about 70 years. 75, 80 years. This is the country of Israel. And so that's why and another thing, we fund Israel. America gives billions of dollars to Israel. You know, we have this war going on right now with Israel and Iran, and we're backing Israel and things like that. But just wanted to show you how it's not just here in America that white supremacy goes on. It's all over the world. And even though we can say that country, Israel, and we see the Jews in that country look a certain way, that doesn't mean that the Jews in the Bible look that way. The Jews in the Bible look like us. The Jews of today look white. That's a difference, because that country was only founded in 1948, and they picked and chose who they wanted to come into that country. Okay, so and so here in America, just like overseas, they did a lot of things that we're not this country is not proud of. Our history books don't talk about things that involve real discrimination, real things like bombing Tulsa, bombing Rosewood, our schools being defunded, our children being miseducated, our communities being flooded with drugs, our businesses being denied bank loans and things like that. Those things get pushed to the side. We don't put that in our history books. We don't put these things in because we don't want people to know what truly happens here in America. And they tell us that we can't afford reparations. We can't afford to give blacks. And I did a little research. Remember they said it was going to give us 40 acres and a mule? Y'all remember that? Well,
Yeah.
if you take 40 acres and a mule and you equate it to today's dollars, that's about $500,000. That's about $500,000 that we were promised to get from slavery. And so
Right.
and so yeah, but they say, well, we can't afford it. Yet we give billions of dollars to other countries each and every year. We just give it away. We just give money away, but they tell us they can't afford to take care of people right here in their own country. And so we look at these things, and it's hard. I know why people say I don't want to be a Christian. I know. I can see why people say I don't want to follow this God. I don't want to, because of the injustices in the name of Christ, in the name of Jesus. We say that we are a Christian country. We say that we are, but the gospel has been hijacked. And I'm just going down the list of things that has been taking place over the last few years, because I want to establish the fact that yes, but this is not what Jesus envisioned. This is not what God envisioned when he created a new covenant. And the new covenant is perfect. It's the people. It's the people that changed. It's the people that misled. It's the people that started this whole thing of just discrimination and things like that. So don't be discouraged with Christianity. Learn the history of what goes on in this country and how you can fight this by following Christ. Because Christ gives us answers. He gives us freedom. He makes us bold. He gives us courage to answer the things that go on in this country. And a lot of people get discouraged and they just turn away from Christ. When we talk about the cursing, everyone in this country is cursed. Everyone in this world is cursed when you're born. Tiffany talked about last week in Genesis, Adam and Eve, and the curse was placed on everyone because of what Adam did. And so the only way to break that curse is to follow and have love with Jesus. And so that curse right there supersedes any other curse. Any other curse that goes on. So if you go find in the Bible, this people was cursed, or that person is cursed, or this group of people are cursed. The curse of Adam and Eve supersedes all other curses. And he tells us in the new covenant how to break the curse of Adam and Eve. Follow Jesus. Trust him. Love as he has loved you. That's how you break the curse. So any curse that you may have fallen into can be broken through the belief and following and belief of Jesus. Okay? All right. And so what's going on now? They've taken a lot of our liberation and truth, and the black church was a place that we can go to and get answers to questions that we are faced with when it comes to segregation and discrimination. And I look at the black church in the 1960s and the 1970s, and this was a place that a lot of civil rights people gathered to have meetings and things like that. And then somehow in the 80s and 90s, the black church started to look different. We started to transform the gospel and start talking about prosperity and performance. They said, sow a seed and you'll get rich. God wants you to be wealthy. If you're poor, it's your fault. You didn't believe hard enough. They turned Jesus into a lottery ticket. They turned salvation into a transaction. And so now all of the leaders that we had years ago have either been killed or locked up or replaced with this newfound Christianity. And now we don't hear in the black church justice anymore like we used to. We don't hear things like righteousness and reparations and freedom and equality. We don't hear those messages as much as we used to, because now those messages have been replaced with prosperity messages and mega churches and all these emotional highs that go on in church today. And every week, black people came to church looking for hope and left with empty promises, looking for prosperity and left with empty promises. So we traded prophets for performers. We went from seeking Jesus to seeking dollars, and now we're flipping through the scriptures trying to find ways in which we could get paid more money. I remember years ago, I was going to this church. It was a prosperity church. And I had a friend of mine, and we were talking about like Bible, talking about the Bible and stuff like that. And he was, and what he did basically, he had a set of scriptures that he would read, and all those scriptures dealt with money. So it was like, if you go through the Bible and you find scriptures that deal with how to make money and how to get rich and things like that, he was like, I read these scriptures every day. And that's what this whole foundation has been ruined, because we've replaced the truth with prosperity now. And now we don't hear the truth anymore. We don't hear what really goes on going on today. And now we're hearing this whole man-made prosperity gospel that goes on today. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know all those scriptures were in the Bible. And but what about liberation? What about freedom? What about equality? Okay? And that's what we are, that's what we're looking at. So the gospel was the gospel. So what happened? They set it up. You know, it's called the Word of Faith Gospel in the 1960s, and when Christianity became a television show or a television station, they started putting all these different churches on TV, and they would preach the same messages over and over and over again, until you started to think that prosperity was part of Christianity. Like the prosperity gospel was a part of Christianity. And so I was a kid during those days, and I don't want my children believing that the prosperity gospel is the true message of Christ. I don't want my children believing that Jesus was white. I don't want my children believing any of those things, because that's what that's what I was brought up believing. Okay? And I was a sucker. I spent many years in those churches following the prosperity gospel and rejecting who I really was as a person. It took me years. I remember even saying, well, no, I don't think we were the true Hebrews. I don't know. I think I'm a Gentile. I even said that to myself, because that's what I was fed. That's what I was taught. I was taught the wrong way. I was taught a lie, and I believed it. And we don't want our children, we don't want our young people believing lies. And we don't want them leaving the church, though. Okay? And it's so much going on today. You know, it's so much going on today with this hijacked gospel. And so that's what we want to make sure that we we tell the truth. Okay? And so they knew something powerful. We talked about this. Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, Marcus Garvey, they were all either murdered, assassinated, or exiled for preaching determination, preaching freedom, exposing white supremacy. They were stopped, and so a lot of our leaders who stood up and spoke up, they would say, we're gonna get rid of you. We're gonna close those doors. When they tell us that we're God's people, that's what they were telling us. We are God's people. We deserve more. We won't bow anymore. That's what our leaders were telling us back in the 60s. And that's what they didn't want us to know. So they killed our leaders. They killed our preachers and replaced those people with what we see today. The word of faith preachers. We replaced them. And now the word of faith preachers are saying you can get rich if you give money. Okay? So no more liberation. Let's replace them with word of faith. And that's what's happening today. And they told us at the same time that we had low IQ scores. We were not intelligent. Our cultural value didn't matter. And they gave us standardized tests and told us that's what we're worth. They gave us TV preachers to distract us. They gave us religious lies to pacify us. And they called it Christianity. But it wasn't Christ. It was control. It was control. What happens when you speak like this? You're considered a radical. You're considered a communist. That's what they call those people. A traitor. You're considered dangerous. Remember a few years ago, we had an NFL player take a knee to protest injustice done by police in America, and he was considered un-American. He was considered to be a traitor. Colin Kaepernick, they call him un-American. And so, and then we began to talk about how we want to talk about who Jesus really was, who black people really are, who the true Jews really are. If it kind of forces us to talk about this, because when they tell us that we're un-American, we're more American than anybody. Okay, in 1619, when I think we came here even before 1619, when we were brought over here to this country against our will, we helped build this country. And then they tell us that you're lazy. They tell us that you're unintelligent. When we built this country, and then they keep switching, I don't know how many times they didn't switch the math up in school. They just try to keep finding ways to make you score low. And then once we start making higher test scores and our black women are now going to college and getting degrees, now all of a sudden college degrees don't matter that much no more. It's just one of those things that they keep moving the goalposts. If you tell us what the rules are and allow us to make our way without any disturbance, but they can't do that. They have to always find a way to move and change things, because once we know what the rules are, it's fine. That's why we excel that's why we excel in sports, because the rules are the rules. But when it comes to healthcare and education and things like that, they keep moving it, they keep changing the goalposts. I was told recently that healthcare used to be free, that college education used to be free. And it wasn't until we started demanding it, that's when it started to change. That's when they started to jack up the prices. So, and you could close your eyes and say it don't matter. That's what a lot of people want you to do. That's what a lot of churches want you to do. close your eyes and say it don't matter. But this is the truth. You can find this out easily. Easily find this out. They say insurance wasn't even a part of our daily life because everything was free. Car insurance, home insurance, healthcare was free. It wasn't until we started benefiting from it, and now it's costing you all sorts of money to pay for insurance. So they tried to silence. They want to silence us. They want to silence us. They want to blacklist you. They want to keep you. They want to keep you in this bubble. They want to keep you here. They want to keep you where you're following these leaders, and they want to give us leaders. You know. So this is all a part of what we're owed. We're owed reparations. I talked about that before. We're owed insurance. We're owed health care. Will we get it? I don't know. But these are things that I'm going to continue to talk about. Okay, and hopefully one day our kids will continue to focus on those things as well. Okay, and so we're going to stop right there. I'm running out of time, so that's all we got.